everybody, welcome back to Floramagoria. Thank you for joining us. In today's episode, we're going to talk about drying herbs. Now, as you probably noticed from watching the other show, which I hope that you're watching the other show, please watch the other show. I use a lot of herbs in my cooking. I tend to grow and dry my own, as you can see here. This is one of my sage plants. This is its fourth summer, I believe. Well, both of their fourth summer. The other one's out on the porch still. This poor guy's in here with me. And usually what I do a couple of times, especially in the summer, not so much in the winter because they tend to be trying to relax and just get through the cold weather. Also known as hibernating. No, not hibernating. Yeah, hibernating. Okay, take this part out. I tend to just let them go in the winter. The cold is hard enough on all of them already without me clipping off leaves. So usually I try to do this in the spring. I will give them a trim them back pretty far when I do repotting them, and we'll get to that in another episode come this next spring. So it's going to be a while. But and then usually over the summer, about once a month or so, when it grows back in, I will give them a good trim down, trim off the larger leaves and save them. And also what you want to do is look at some of the stuff underneath, some dead stuff under there. It's a good chance to get all the stuff out of there also. Some of these leaves that are sort of half dead, you know, get them off of there. It's always good to trim stuff back, plants and hair, for different reasons. With plants, if you're taking off the dead and dying leaves and stems, it allows the plant to push more nutrients into the healthier parts of the plant. So usually once a month, grab some scissors. These are my handy dandy kitchen utility scissors. And go ahead and give them a little bit of a trim up, you know. It's good for them, plus, you know, you get good stuff. You can take off some of the larger leaves. You know, sometimes it can be very specific to the type of plant. With sage, I'm not too worried about it. I usually stay away from these smaller leaves that are just starting out and get some of the larger ones down lower, like these you can see here. And yeah, that's about it. But the thing about drying herbs is you have to have patience. And paper lunch bags. This is the key. Okay, yeah, no, I sound insane. But actually, this is the best way I have found to dry herbs. I've been doing this for years, and it always works out really well. Now, the last thing that you want to do is put it in an oven. Introduce it to heat in any way. Like I have my handy dandy little ginger root here. Now, ginger is a little bit different than herbs. You can dry this in an oven. It can take a lot of heat. It's very fibrous. You don't have a lot of oils that you're trying to preserve in it. So something like this, you can skin it and take your mandolin to it, cut it up into very thin slices, stick it on a paper towel, on a cookie sheet, and pop it in the oven at like 100 degrees. And you're good. But with herbs, we have this wonderful, wonderful oils, and the leaves can be very fragile. And the first couple of years when I did this, I would put it in the oven. I was like, why do my herbs not have any flavor? That's why. You're drying them way too quick. So the best thing to do is just, here. This is one that I use on a regular basis. Lunch bag. 3-hole punch. Put a piece of paper towel inside and a little string on the end and hang it up. And some of the plants may only take a week. They might take 2 weeks. Sage, unfortunately, and basil have a lot of water in them. So they're going to take 3 weeks to a month, really, to dry. But it's all good. Trust me. Once they are, it's amazing. So it's you don't even have to buy them from the store anymore because it's better than what you get at the store, pretty much. So what we're going to do is take a little strainer, colander, whatever you want to do. Take some scissors, and we're just going to trim off a few leaves. Remember, avoiding these top leaves that are just forming. If you go a few down, it's fine. It'll probably work out better. And while you're doing it, like some of these like yellowing leaves, they're drying out. You go ahead and chop them off. And some of this dead stuff on inside, grab all that out and toss it. And now it's all over my clean table. I was not thinking there. Yeah. And you know, I'm not going to do a thorough job, but you can see some of these. I haven't done this in a while for my plants, actually. I've been meaning to do this episode for like a month, and I haven't gotten around to it, so all my plants are overgrown and need to be trimmed back. As you can see, they have some real big leaves here, and some dying leaves that need to be pulled off. And you know, sometimes leaves shrivel up and die inside. It's not a bad idea to get it out of there. I don't know what that was. Stuff's falling over my house again. It happens. But okay, so anyway, just as an example, and we'll go ahead and put that down there. Normally what I would do is I would take these and wash off any dirt that's on them, clean them off really thoroughly, and then take a towel, or in this case a work mat, lay it out on the table. It always works really well for me to do it out here. And then, you know, just line your dried leaves up. You do it however you want. Normally I have a whole table full of these because I do a bunch of them at a time. And then cover them with a towel or a work mat or something like that. Just make sure there's towel on the bottom, towel on the top. And let them dry out for a few hours, or if you do it in the evening, let them dry out overnight. That's fine too. And then the next day, take your thoroughly washed and now dried leaves and go ahead and put them in your drying bag. And literally, this is just, I took one of these and I just made my hand cramp up by putting holes all over it, except at the bottoms, because you don't want anything to fall out. If you have smaller stuff like thyme, you know. Taped up the top to reinforce it with like packing tape, and took an old string and put it through. And of course I wrote what it was on it, of course, that's important. And then I just hang this up in my house. That's an important part. We'll cover it in a second. So in about a month, after doing all of these steps, you get lovely dried herbs. And that is really all you have to do. And from this point on, you can leave them whole, you can put them in a food processor or a coffee grinder. That works really well too. And grind them up into a powder. You can use a mortar and pestle if you're old school like me. I do own one of those. I use it for celery seeds when I'm cooking. And what works really well is if you get small ball jars, and there you go. And I have like 20 of these in my cupboards with my spices. And you know, keep them closed tight. They're good for like a year. And honestly, most of the time, these don't last a year. I usually go through them by about spring, just because they're delicious. And you know, you don't have to buy stuff. You don't have to buy stuff from the store, because you're literally making the same thing. It's very simple, and you probably have all the stuff at your house that you need. But see, the second part of this is really important also. You need to hang this in an area where it's going to get a lot of airflow, really. So I'm going to go move my camera, and I'm going to show you where I have mine hanging up in just a second here. Okay, we are back in my other rooms, as you can see, and I have this wonderful high archway here. I have a weird old house that has like 10-foot ceilings in it. It's like 100 years old, and it was selling for super super cheap because it's in kind of a mess, as you can probably see. But I have these great high archways in here, and right in between the rooms, there's a lot of nice airflow. So I like to keep these in here. I have my air conditioner and a window over here. When it gets when it gets cooler, because right now it's middle of August, or like the hottest part of the year. And when it gets cooler, I have windows I can put open. When it gets a little cooler than that, I have some space heaters running. So this is just a nice big open area. It gets a lot of airflow moving back and forth. So it's a really good place to, keep your herbs while they're drying, even though I tend to run into the bags a lot with my head. I mean, it's not a good situation. It works well for the herbs, but it's a pain in the butt to get around. It's my fault for being tall. Anyway, so I would advise avoiding places like basements where you keep them out of the middle of your house, where you're not banging your head off of them, because they can definitely grow mold. You want nice dry air, lots of air moving back and forth through. And usually once a day or so, once every other day, I like to come down, grab the bags down, give them a little bit of a shake, just to stir stuff up in there, and then hang them back up. There you go. It's pretty simple. I have thumbtacks up here, I don't know if you can see it, but I just stuck some thumbtacks into the wall. I also use it for decorations for Halloween, so it's not just a single use thing. But yeah, it's just as simple as that. So we're gonna head back in the kitchen, and I have one more thing to talk about before the episode is over, so give me 1 second. You guys there? Hi. Now the last thing I wanted to, hold on. The last thing I wanted to cover for this episode was talking about plants that have flowered. Now, this is my very, very healthy oregano plant. As you can see, it's flowering all over the place. And this is a really good time to talk about this, because what you can do is save seeds for next year. And I am I am a bit of a nut about saving seeds. I love doing it. I do it way too much. I leave them all over my house. You can ask my partner Dan. There's always seeds being knocked on the floor. I'm like, oh, what was that? I don't know, because I don't label them. Because I'm a menace. Anyway, so the good thing about this is, as you can see, we have a bunch of little blooms that, well, I hope you can see. I might not have this zoomed in enough. But we have a bunch of little blooms that have opened and are now starting to die. And that's right about where you want to be when you save seeds. So, where are my scissors? Aha! So, what you want to do is, if you can see, go ahead and just trim this off, down. There we go. I'm going to trim a couple of these down. Now, it's not a bad idea if it's like in the middle of the summer and you want to keep your plant going to trim the buds off anyway, even if you're not going to be saving seeds, because it'll help, produce more. They definitely slow down when they're blooming. They put a lot, because obviously that's the point of all of this is, for a lot of plants is reproduction, and then you're like, okay, well, my genes are out there. I can go die now. And they spend a lot of energy doing that. And as I said before, I've kind of been neglecting trimming up my plants, and it kind of just, everywhere. So, but that's good. That means we have a lot of plants to work with, and I can go ahead and trim down most of these little flower bunches and keep a good number of them, because what we can do, and this is a really excellent example here, what we can do is take these off, and we're gonna, actually, you know what, I might trim this down just to make it a little bit easier. There we go, so they're about the same size. And as you can probably see, I'm dropping some leaves here, because this is the second half of the flower life cycle. They're starting to fade and die here. And we're going to go ahead and stick them in an envelope. Try to stick them in like a little bit cattywampus. And get a paper clip. There you go. And then what you can do is you can hang this up with your other herbs that you're drying, and give it a few weeks for the seeds to drop out. Actually, it probably wasn't even that long necessarily, but you can give them a little bit of time, drop the seeds out, and there you go. You're good for next year. Alright, so that was all I wanted to cover for this episode today. So thank you so much for joining me again, and I guess the show is back now, just like the other show. I guess we're back doing this regularly again, and thank you all for hanging in there with me and coming back, especially. I really appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe and like, and one of these days I'm going to be setting up a Patreon for both shows, or maybe just for me, I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. And hopefully you guys can give me some insight into what topics you want me to cover eventually, you know, when we get down to that point, when I have the time to do it. So, alright, happy planning, guys. We'll see you next time.